What does a man do when he wakes up in hell and discovers hell is the place that has been waiting for a king for 3,000 years? I have walked through 7 layers of the underworld. I have stood at the edge of furnaces older than language. I have watched things that no living tongue has a name for. And in all that walking, in all that watching, none of those places frightened me as much as the silence the demon lords kept the day he arrived. I am RiseArc. I tell stories that should not be told, from places that should not exist, about people who should not have lived. This is the story of one of them, and of all of them, this one I tell with the most care, because the man at the center of it asked for nothing, not power, not vengeance, not even peace. He asked only for 1 more hour with his wife. He got an empire instead. Listen. There is a moment, very early in this story, that I want you to see before anything else. Before the thrones. Before the lake of black fire. Before the 12 crowns laid on the obsidian floor in perfect, silent unison. Before any of that, there is a hospital corridor. The corridor is at the back of a small county hospital in a town that does not matter to anyone who has not lived there. The lights along the ceiling flicker every 23 seconds. The man sitting on the plastic chair against the wall has counted them. He has counted them 412 times, because counting is the only thing his mind will still do. His name is Aren Vexharrow. He is 41 years old. He is an accountant for a small construction firm. He wears a navy blue jacket that his wife bought him 6 years ago because she said the color made his eyes look kind. He has not changed his clothes in 2 days. Inside the room behind him, his wife is dying. Her name is Eliza. They have been married for 12 years. They met at a wedding neither of them wanted to attend, both standing at the dessert table at the same time, both reaching for the last slice of lemon cake. She let him take it. He cut it in half and gave her the bigger piece. That, he told her later, was the moment he knew. She told him that was also the moment she knew, but for a different reason, because the way he cut the cake was so careful, so even, like he was measuring something that mattered. 12 years. No children. They tried. It did not happen. They built a life around each other instead, which is its own kind of child, and they raised that life together, and it grew, and it was good. Then, 18 months ago, the headaches started. The doctor used a word Aren had to write down because he could not pronounce it. Then another word. Then a third. By the end of the appointment, Aren was holding a piece of paper with 5 words on it, none of which were English in any way that mattered, and one of which meant, in plain language, that the woman he loved had between 6 and 24 months left. She got 14. In the corridor, the nurse comes out. The nurse is young, 26 perhaps, and she has not yet learned how to hide her face. Her face tells Aren everything before her mouth does. He stands up. He walks past her. He goes into the room. He sits on the edge of the bed. He takes his wife's hand. It is already cold, but only at the fingertips. He warms the fingertips with his own hand. He leans down. He whispers something into her ear that no one else will ever hear. It is a promise. The promise is not realistic. The promise is not possible. He makes it anyway because there is nothing else left to give her. The monitor, which has been making a small, regular sound for 14 months, makes a different sound now. A flat sound. A line. The nurse is in the doorway. She says very quietly, "I'm sorry." Aren does not let go of the hand. He sits there for 1 hour. The nurse does not make him leave. At the end of the hour, he stands up, kisses Eliza on the forehead, walks out of the hospital, drives home, sits down on the couch in the living room where they used to watch bad movies together, and his heart simply stops. The coroner will later say it was cardiac arrest, brought on by acute grief. There is a clinical term for this. The term is real. People do die of broken hearts. They die quietly, on couches, holding the remote control of a television that is not turned on. Aren Vexharrow died 2 minutes after his wife. He expected nothing. He expected, at best, a long darkness. At worst, the punishment that small, ordinary men are taught to fear when they have lived small, ordinary lives without saving anyone, or building anything, or being remembered by anyone except the wife they have just lost. He got neither. What he got instead was a procession. The The first thing Aren Vexharrow saw, in the place after the place, was a sky the color of old iron, low and heavy, and folded in on itself like a blanket pulled across a face. The second thing he saw was that he was standing. The third thing he saw was that his hand, which had been holding a cold hand only a moment ago, was empty. He looked down at his empty hand for a long time. He was 41 years old, he was alone, and he was, by every measure he had ever understood, dead. The hand stayed empty. He closed it slowly into a fist. He opened it again. Empty. Then he heard the footsteps. There were many of them. They were not human footsteps. The sound was wrong in a way that took him a moment to identify. There was no flesh in the sound. It was the sound of weight without bone, of presence without breath. He looked up. The figure approaching him was tall, very tall, perhaps 8 feet, and it wore a long gray robe that did not move when the wind moved. Its face was covered by a hood that had no shadow inside it, only more hood, all the way down. It walked with a slow, ceremonial step, as though every footfall had been rehearsed for centuries. Behind it, in a long line, were 30 more like it. Aren did not run. There was nowhere to run. He stood very still and waited. He had learned, in the last 14 months, that there are situations in which running is not an option, and in which the only dignified thing is to stand and meet whatever is coming. The first figure stopped 6 feet from him. It bowed. Not deeply, a small, precise bow, the kind a senior official offers to a slightly more senior official. "My lord," the figure said. Its voice was the sound of dry leaves being slowly torn in half. "You are expected." Aren stared at it. He said with the calm that comes from a mind that has run out of fuel for surprise, "I'm sorry. I think there's been a mistake." The figure tilted its hood. Aren could not see its face, but he had the strong sense that somewhere inside the hood, something was smiling at him in a way that was not unkind. "There is no mistake," it said. "There has not been a mistake for 3,000 years. My name is Kyle Ozun. I am the servitor of the inner court. I will be your first escort. Walk with me." Aren did not move. He said, "Where am I?" The servitor turned slightly and lifted one long gray arm and pointed. What Aren had taken for the horizon was not a horizon. It was a wall. The wall was made of black stone, and it rose into the iron sky until the sky and the stone became the same thing. And at the base of the wall there was a gate, and the gate was open, and beyond the gate Aren could see a lake. The lake was on fire. It was not on fire the way wood is on fire or oil. The flames came from inside the water itself, black flames that climbed up out of the surface in slow, unhurried columns, and the columns moved in patterns that were not random. They were following something or someone, or some calendar that Aren did not understand. "That," said the servitor Kyle Ozun, "is the lake of first arrival. Every soul who comes to the inner realm passes through it. Most do not pass through it well. You, my lord, will pass through it without noticing." Aren said, "I'm not your lord." The servitor bowed again. "You are. You simply do not remember yet. Walk with me, please. The court has waited a very long time." He walked. What else could he do? He was dead, and he was empty-handed, and somewhere in the back of his mind there was a flicker of something that was not quite curiosity, but was close to it. He had spent his entire life being told that he was unremarkable. He had spent his entire life being told that he was unremarkable. He had agreed with that assessment. And now, on the day of his death, a thing in a gray robe was calling him, "My lord," and bowing to him in the road. So he walked. The road they took was not a road in the sense that you and I would understand it. It was a line of dark stone laid across a plain of gray ash, and the ash moved like water under their feet, and yet the stone did not sink. As they walked, Aren began to see shapes in the distance, towers, or perhaps the ribs of enormous animals, or perhaps the ruins of cities he had never been taught existed. He could not tell. The light here did not behave the way light should. Kyle Ozun walked beside him, neither faster nor slower, matching his pace exactly. After a long time of silence, Aren said, "How did I die?" "Your heart stopped, my lord." "Why?" "Because you asked it to." Aren stopped walking. The servitor stopped also. The 30 figures behind them stopped, in perfect synchrony, as though they had been listening for the cue. The silence on the plain was very large. "I didn't ask it to stop," Aren said slowly. "You did, my lord. You did not say the words aloud. You said them inside the chamber of your chest, the way kings have always given their last orders. You told your heart that you were finished. Your heart obeyed. It always does. It always has." Aren said nothing. He looked down at his empty hand again. He thought about Eliza. He thought about the navy blue jacket. He thought about the lemon cake. The ash at his feet shifted, very gently, as though the plain itself had taken a breath. "Walk, my lord," said Kyle Ozan. "There is more you do not yet remember. The lake is close." They walked. The lake of first arrival was a mile across, or perhaps 10 miles, or perhaps the distance between two thoughts. Aren could not say. The black flames climbed slowly from its surface in columns that, the closer he came, he could see were arranged in 12 points around the perimeter, like the numbers on a clock. At each point stood a figure, 12 figures, each one taller than Kyle Ozun, each one wearing armor that did not reflect light. They were waiting for him. Kyle Ozun stopped at the shore. He bowed, more deeply this time. "I am not permitted further, my lord. The court will receive you on the other side. Walk into the lake. Do not hesitate. Do not look back. The flame remembers you." Aren looked at the lake. He said, "And if it doesn't?" The servitor did not answer for a long moment. Then, very quietly, almost gently, he said, "Then I will be wrong, and the last 3,000 years of my service will have been a misunderstanding. Walk, my lord." Aren walked into the lake. The first step, the water came to his ankles. It was warm but not hot. The flames passed through his clothing as though his clothing were not there, and through his skin as though his skin were not there. He felt nothing. The second step, the water came to his knees. He felt his breath slow. The third step, the water came to his chest, and the flames climbed up his neck and over his face and into his open eyes, and still he felt nothing. He kept walking. By the time he reached the center of the lake, the flames had wrapped around him entirely, and he was a man-shaped column of black fire walking on the floor of an underworld lake, and the 12 figures on the shore had begun, one by one, to kneel. The first to kneel was the oldest. He was so old that his armor had grown into his shoulders, plate and bone now indistinguishable. His name, Aren would learn shortly, was Demon Lord Vazamor the Patient, and he had been waiting at this lake every day for 3,017 years, and he had never sat down once during the wait. The second to kneel was a woman with iron tears running down her cheeks. They were not metaphorical tears. They were tears made of actual iron, hot and slow, and they had scarred 2 channels into her face over the centuries. Her name was Demon Lord Syrexa of the House of Iron Tears, and her domain was grief. She was the one who had been told, 3,000 years ago, that a king would arrive who had been forged in loss. She had been the most skeptical of the 12. She knelt the most easily. The third to kneel was a thin figure carrying a ledger so heavy it had to be supported by 2 attendants. His name was Demon Lord Morthane the Ledger Keeper, and he had personally written every soul debt owed and paid in the inner realm for the last 28 centuries. He knelt with his ledger open, because the page he had been writing on that morning had filled itself, in his own handwriting, with the words, "He is here." The fourth to kneel was Demon Lord Karasith the Bone Mason, whose domain was the architecture of the inner realm. He knelt slowly, because his knees were carved from the femurs of a creature that no longer existed, and they did not bend easily. The fifth was Demon Lord Isareth of the Whispering Vault, whose throat had been sewn shut 6 centuries ago for speaking a forbidden truth, and who knelt now with the slow grace of a woman who had been right all along and was finally being told so. The sixth was Demon Lord Threnokar the Bound, whose hands had been chained together for 2,000 years as punishment for a crime he had not committed. He knelt, and the chains fell off. They fell off by themselves. They had been waiting, like everything else, for the right witness. The 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, and 11th knelt in a single fluid motion, as though they had rehearsed it, which they had, once a year, every year, for 30 centuries. Their names were Demon Lord Velith, Demon Lord Oxencar, Demon Lord Drusel, Demon Lord Farron, and Demon Lord Bruceavax. Each had a domain, each had been waiting. The 12th was the youngest. He had been a Demon Lord for only 400 years. His name was Demon Lord Kareth of the Last Watch, and his task had been to greet whoever came last and to make sure the throne knew. He did not kneel, he bowed. Then he turned, walked to the wall behind him, and pressed his hand against an obsidian door that had been sealed for 3,017 years. The door opened. Inside the door was a throne. The throne was not large. It was, in fact, the most modest throne in the entire inner realm, a low seat of black stone, with a back no taller than a man's shoulders, and arms worn smooth by the hands of every king who had ever sat in it. There had been only one. He had sat in it for 900 years, and then he had gone, and the throne had been empty for 3,000 years after that. When Aren Vexharrow stepped from the lake of black fire onto the shore, the throne lit itself. It was a slow light, not theatrical, a golden-violet glow that began in the seat and worked its way up the back and out along the arms until the whole throne was breathing softly with light, the way a sleeping animal breathes. The 12 demon lords, still kneeling, removed their crowns in unison and placed them on the obsidian floor. Aren stood at the edge of the lake. He was dripping black fire that did not burn the stone. He looked at the throne. He looked at the 12 crowns. He looked at the 12 kneeling figures. He said, in a voice that surprised him with its calm, "I think you have the wrong man." Demon Lord Vazamor the Patient lifted his head. His eyes, in the light of the self-lit throne, were the color of old wine. He spoke for the first time in 3,000 years. His voice was the sound of a door that has been waiting to be opened. "My lord," he said, "we have the right man. We have always had the right man. You simply have not yet remembered why. May we show you?" Aren did not answer. He could not. Something was happening inside his head. A small thing at first, a memory that was not his, slipping in along the edge of a memory that was. He saw, for half a second, a young woman in a green dress, laughing. He had never seen her before. He knew her name. The name was Selenia. She had been his wife, not Eliza, another wife, 800 years ago. He took a step back. He almost fell. Vazamor stood slowly, with the care of a creature that has waited so long that hurrying would be an insult to the waiting. He approached Aren, stopped 6 feet away, and bowed again. "May we show you?" he repeated. Aren said, "Show me what?" "Show you who you were, 12 times. Show you why the throne knows your foot. Show you why the lake did not burn you. Show you why the chains of Threnakar fell off when you stepped onto the stone. Show you the qualification of grief, my lord. May we?" Aren closed his eyes. He saw the young woman in the green dress again. He saw behind her a city that he had never been to but knew the streets of. He saw a battlefield. He saw a library. He saw a child whose face he did not recognize but whose name he could speak. Lauren, his son, dead at 6, 400 years ago in another life. He opened his eyes. He said, "Yes." Vazamor lifted one armored hand. The other 11 demon lords rose. They formed a circle around Aren, not threatening, ceremonial. Each of them placed a hand on his shoulders, his back, the crown of his head. They were very gentle. They had been practicing this gentleness for 3 millennia, in case it was ever needed. And then they gave him back his lives. It happened in one instant. Aren Vexharrow, accountant, 41 years old, stood in a circle of demon lords on the shore of a burning lake and became 12 men at once. He was a shepherd in a mountain valley 2,400 years ago who had carried his wife 6 miles down a snowy slope to a healer who could not save her, and who had buried her under a cairn of stones he could no longer remember the location of. He was a soldier in a forgotten war who had watched his entire unit die in a single afternoon and who had walked home alone across a continent that had stopped being his. He was a scholar in a library that no longer existed who had spent 40 years writing a single book and who had watched the book burn in front of him on the day it was finished. He was a king. He had been a king once, only once, 900 years ago, and he had ruled a small mountain kingdom with great care for 41 years, and he had died on his own throne of nothing but old age, and the weight of having outlived everyone he had ever loved. He was a fisherman. He was a carpenter. He was a doctor in a plague year. He was a father who had buried 3 children. He was a husband who had buried 4 wives. He was, in every life, the one who stayed when others left, the one who carried, the one whose heart did not break until the very last second, and then broke completely, and then started again, somewhere else, with new hands. 12 lives, 12 griefs, each one a deposit, the demon lords had said in the ledger of Morthane, each one a payment toward a qualification. And then the 13th. Aren Vexharrow, the accountant, the smallest of all of them, the most ordinary, the one with no battles, no kingdoms, no plagues to outlast, only a wife, only one wife, only Eliza, and only 14 months of slow goodbye in a small county hospital. That, the demon lords had decided, was the final qualification. A man who could grieve a single ordinary life completely, without flinching, without running, without lying about it to himself for even 1 second. That was the kind of man who could sit on a throne of an underworld and not be corrupted by it. Because such a man already knew that no power, no kingdom, no throne, no crown, no army was worth a single afternoon with the person he had lost. Such a man could rule and never want anything from his rule. Such a man was the only kind of king the inner realm could trust. Aren opened his eyes. He was on his knees. He did not remember kneeling. The 12 demon lords were standing around him in a circle, and they were waiting. He stood up. His clothes had changed. The navy blue jacket was gone. In its place was a long, dark robe, simple, almost monastic, with no insignia, no embroidery, no marks of office. The robe of the quiet king. The only crown he wore was the one no one could see, the memory of 12 lives, layered behind his eyes like the rings of a tree. He walked, alone, to the throne. He sat down. The throne fit him. Demon Lord Vazimor the Patient knelt one last time. He said, "Welcome home, my lord. The realm is yours. What are your first orders?" Aren Vexharrow, who had been an accountant 2 days ago, who had buried his wife yesterday, who had died on his couch 4 hours ago, who now remembered every grief that had ever shaped him across 2,500 years, looked down at the 12 crowns lying on the floor of his own throne room and said, "End the wars, all of them, tonight." The 12 demon lords bowed. They had been waiting 3,000 years to be told exactly that. There were 3 wars in the inner realm when Aren Vexharrow took the throne. Each of them was older than any human nation. Each of them had its own ledger in Demon Lord Morthane's vault. Each of them had been kept burning by inertia, by pride, and by the simple fact that the throne had been empty and there had been no one with the authority to put them out. The first war was between the Ash Legion and the House of Iron Tears. It had begun 900 years ago over a question of inheritance, and it had killed, by Morthane's count, 41,000 soldiers, none of whom had cared about the original question by the time they died. The second war was a quiet war. It was called the Long Silence. It had been fought between 2 scholarly orders for 600 years, over a single line in a single text. They no longer fired weapons at each other, they simply refused to speak. The silence had become so heavy that entire libraries had been abandoned because no one could remember which side they belonged to. The third war was the worst. It was called the War of the Three Mothers. It had been started by a betrayal between sisters 1,200 years ago, and it had gone on so long that none of the original families remembered who their grandmothers had been or which side they had taken. They fought because they had always fought. Their children fought because their fathers had fought. Their grandchildren would fight because their grandfathers had. Aren ended all 3 wars in 72 hours. He did not end them with force. Force was not the qualification he had been chosen for. He ended them with attention. He summoned General Karajal of the Ash Legion first. Karajal was an enormous figure, 12 feet tall, made of gray stone and hot ash, with eyes the color of a banked fire. He had fought in the war for 900 years. He had inherited it from his father, who had inherited it from his father, who had been one of the men who started it. He came into the throne room expecting to receive new orders. He intended to refuse them. Aren did not give him orders. He said, "Sit down, Karajal. Karajal did not sit. There was no chair. The throne room had only the throne, and the throne was occupied. Aren said, "Then stand. Tell me, in your own words, what this war is about." Karajal opened his mouth. He stopped. He thought. He had not been asked this question by anyone in 900 years. He found, to his great surprise, that he could not remember the answer. "It is about," he began. Then he stopped again. The throne room was very quiet. Demon Lord Vazamor, standing by the door, did not move. "It is about inheritance," Karajal said finally. "It is about a piece of land. It is about—" He stopped a third time. He looked at the floor. "It is about," he said very slowly, "the fact that we have always been at war." Aren said, "Is that a reason?" Karajal did not answer. Aren said, "I am going to ask you one question, General. Answer honestly. If I order you to put down this war tonight, before dawn, with no further death, will you obey?" Karajal lifted his head. His eyes, full of 900 years of fire, met the eyes of the quiet king, which were full of something older. They held that look for a long moment. Then General Karajal of the Ash Legion knelt, for the first time in his recorded existence, and said, "Yes, my lord, I will obey. And I will be grateful." The war ended 6 hours later. The other 2 wars ended within 72 hours in similar fashion. Aren spoke to each commander privately. He did not threaten. He did not flatter. He asked one question, "What is this for?" And he waited, in silence, until the commander could not answer. And then he offered a way out, and every commander, without exception, took it. Demon Lord Morthane closed 3 ledgers that had been open for centuries. He wrote, on the final page of each, a single word in his careful handwriting: "Completed." The inner realm had not been at peace for 3,000 years. By the end of the first week of Aren Vexharrow's reign, it was. The second order Aren gave was harder. He summoned Demon Lord Syrexa of the House of Iron Tears, and Demon Lord Morthane the Ledger Keeper, and a scribe demon named Aren the Patient, who had been a scholar in life and remained one in death. He told them to open the oldest book in the realm. The book was called the Tribute Covenant. It was the document signed 3,000 years ago by the first quiet king that had bound the mortal world to send a certain number of souls down into the inner realm every century as a tribute. The souls were not chosen for crime. They were chosen by lottery. Children sometimes, mothers, strangers, people plucked from their lives by a mechanism they could not see, sent into a realm they did not know existed, used as fuel for an economy they had never agreed to participate in. It was the foundation of the inner realm's power. Every furnace, every tower, every road of dark stone had been paid for in some way by the involuntary arrival of those souls. Aren read the document twice. Then he said, "Rewrite it." Aren the Patient looked up from the book. "My lord?" "Rewrite it. No more involuntary tribute. From tonight, anyone who arrives in this realm arrives by their own consent, or archable thing for a demon to do." He said, "My lord, the inner realm runs on that tribute. If we end it, the furnaces will burn cooler," Aren said. "The towers will fall into some disrepair. The roads will need to be walked instead of rolled upon. We will be poorer. We will be smaller. We will be just." Morthane bowed. He did not argue further. He had been waiting 3,000 years to be told that justice was worth more than fuel, and he was not going to waste the moment by quibbling. The Tribute Covenant was rewritten that night. The new version was 61 pages shorter than the old one. The first line read, "No soul shall enter this realm against its will." The last line read, "Signed, Aren Vexharrow, by the qualification of grief." 3 days after the new covenant was signed, the upper realm sent its first observer in 3,000 years. His name was the Archon Vexharrow. He arrived without ceremony, walking up the road of dark stone alone, dressed in white linen that did not show the ash, with a face that was beautiful in the way a glacier is beautiful, magnificent, and entirely unmoved. He was met at the gate by Demon Lord Karith of the Last Watch. Karith bowed. Vexharrow did not bow back. Archons do not bow to demons, they observe. Karith led him to the throne room. Aren was sitting in the throne, reading a report from Aren on the resettlement of released souls. He looked up when Vexharrow entered. He did not stand. Kings do not stand for archons either. Vethariel said, "You have ended the tribute." Aren said, "I have." Vethariel said, "You have ended 3 wars." Aren said, "I have." Vethariel was silent for a long moment. Then he said, "You are not what we expected." Aren said, "I am not what I expected either. Sit down, Archon. Tell me what the upper realm wants." Vethariel did not sit. There was still no chair. Archons, like generals, are not provided furniture in this throne room. But he inclined his head, very slightly, which from an Archon is the equivalent of a deep bow. "The upper realm wants," he said, "to know whether you are stable. We have been watching you for 72 hours. We have seen no excess. We have seen no cruelty. We have seen no hunger for expansion. This is unprecedented. We would like to know how long it will last." Aren said, "It will last until I die." "You are already dead, my lord." "Then it will last until I die again. Is there anything else?" says. Vethariel paused. He looked at the quiet king for a long moment, and the quiet king looked back, and in that exchange a great deal was said that no transcript would ever capture. Finally Vethariel said, "Yes, there is one more thing. Your wife is in our realm." The throne room became very still. Aren did not move. He said quietly, "Where?" "In the 3rd garden. She has been there for 4 of your days. She is well. She remembers everything." "Can I see her?" The Archon Vethariel, who had not shown an emotion in 900 years, allowed something to pass across his face that was almost, but not quite, pity. "Not while you are sovereign of this realm, my lord. The covenants do not permit it. A king of the inner realm cannot enter the upper gardens, not even briefly, not even once. It is the oldest rule we have." Aren said, "If I abdicate? Then a war will start that will undo everything you have built in the last week. The 12 lords will tear each other apart for the succession. The tribute will resume within a year. The realm will become, again, what it was before you arrived. And your wife will know that you traded the rescue of 2 billion souls for 1 afternoon with her." The Archon Vethariel let that sentence sit in the air. He was not cruel. He was only honest, in the particular way that beautiful, unmoved things are honest. Aren did not answer for a long time. When he did, his voice was the calmest it had been since he arrived. "Then I will not abdicate," he said. "Tell her—" He stopped. He thought for a moment. "Tell her I am where I am. Tell her I am doing what I can. Tell her the navy blue jacket was the best gift I ever received. Tell her—" He stopped again. His hands on the arms of the throne were perfectly still. "Tell her nothing," he said. "She knows already. She has always known. That was the whole point of her." The Archon Vethariel bowed, a true bow this time, the kind Archons offer perhaps once a millennium, and left. Aren sat in the throne for a long time after the door closed. The 12 crowns were still on the floor. He did not look at them. He looked instead at the obsidian wall above the door, where there was a small carving that had been there for 3,000 years, a single word in the old language that meant endure. He endured. He endured for 9 days. In those 9 days, he restructured the inner realm in ways that no king before him had ever attempted. He divided the 12 regents into 3 councils: the Council of Justice, led by Demon Lord Syrexa of Iron Tears, the Council of Memory, led by Demon Lord Morthane the Ledger Keeper, and the Council of Repair, led by Demon Lord Vazimor the Patient. Each council met daily. Each council reported directly to the throne. Each council was forbidden to keep secrets from the others. He appointed Aren the Patient as the realm's first royal scribe, a position that had not existed in 3,000 years. Aren was given a small chamber off the throne room, a desk made of dark wood that had once been a tree in the upper realm, and one instruction: write everything down. Every order, every refusal, every doubt, every moment of mercy, every moment of mistake. The quiet king wanted a record. He wanted, when he was eventually replaced, for his replacement to know exactly what had been done and exactly why. Aren wrote 16 hours a day. By the end of the first week, the new ledger was already 300 pages thick. The first page bore a single line: "I am a scribe who waited 3,000 years for a king worth recording." He summoned the released souls, the ones who had been brought to the inner realm against their will, some of them centuries ago, and offered each of them 3 choices. They could return to the upper realm, where their original lives had long since ended, and they would be welcomed into whatever garden their spirits qualified for. They could remain in the inner realm as free citizens, no longer bound to any furnace or any tower, with full rights and a small parcel of land in a quarter that Aren had ordered cleared for them. Or they could simply dissolve, peacefully, into the slow gray light of the plain, a true ending, the kind that some of them had been begging for across thousands of years and had never been granted. A surprising number chose the third. Aren signed each request personally. He did not look away. He believed that a king who orders an ending should at least be willing to witness one. Demon Lord Syrexa of Iron Tears stood beside him during the first 100 dissolutions. After the 100th, she said, very quietly, "My lord, you do not have to attend each one." Aren said, "I do." She said, "It is hurting you." Aren said, "It is supposed to." Syrexa, whose entire domain was grief, did not argue further. She had recognized in that single exchange the precise reason the throne had chosen him. On the 4th day, an unexpected figure arrived at the gate. He was a small demon, 3 feet tall, with a crooked back and 1 milky eye. He had been a stable keeper in the lower courts for 900 years. He had never spoken to a king before. He had walked 17 miles up the road of dark stone to make his request in person. His name was Brecknall. He came with a complaint. The complaint was that 600 years ago his daughter, a small demon child named Brekissu, had been taken from him by an officer of the old Ash Legion as collateral for an unpaid debt of 16 iron coins. He had paid the debt within a year. The daughter had never been returned. He had been told in writing by 3 successive administrations of the inner realm that the matter was under review. He brought the writing with him. The papers were brittle. He had carried them folded inside his shirt for 600 years. Aren read the papers. He looked up at Brecknall. He said, "Where is your daughter now, Master Breck?" Brecknall said, "I do not know, my lord. That is my complaint." Aren said, "Morthane." Demon Lord Morthane, the ledger keeper, who was always present at audiences now, stepped forward. Aren said, "Find Brekissu, today, by nightfall. I do not care which ledger she is in. Find her, return her to her father, and bring me the name of the officer who took her." Morthane bowed. He left the throne room at a speed that demon lords are not, traditionally, supposed to demonstrate. Brekissu was found by sundown. She had been working in a furnace in the 3rd quarter for 598 years. She was alive, in the way that demons are alive. She did not at first recognize her father, because she had been told for 6 centuries that he had abandoned her. When she finally understood, she sat down on the floor of the furnace and did not speak for an hour. Then she stood up, walked the 17 miles back up the road of dark stone with her father, and asked to see the king. She was admitted at once. She did not bow. She said, "My lord, you returned me." Aren said, "I did." She said, "Why?" Aren said, "Because you should never have been taken. Because the realm I inherited was full of small thefts that no one had bothered to correct. Because your father walked 17 miles. Because someone has to start." Brekissu was silent. Then she said, "Permission to serve at the throne, my lord." Aren said, "Granted. Speak to Ilarain. He will find you a position." She bowed. She left. By the end of the 2nd week, Brekissu had been appointed door warden of the royal scribery, a position created specifically for her. She held it for the rest of Aren's reign. She was, in time, considered the most loyal servant the throne had ever known. Her father, Brecknall, came to visit her every 7th day, and they would sit on a small stone bench outside the scribery and not say very much, because they had already lost 600 years of conversation, and there was no point in trying to catch up. This was the kind of king Aren Vexharrow was. He did not make grand decrees. He fixed small thefts. He returned daughters to fathers. He signed dissolution papers personally. He listened to 17-mile complaints. He kept a record. The realm noticed. Word travels strangely in an underworld. By the end of the 2nd week, the road of dark stone was full of pilgrims, small demons, lost souls, forgotten clerks, widows of soldiers from the 3 ended wars. all walking up toward the throne to make small requests that had been ignored for centuries. Aren heard them all. He slept 3 hours a night. He did not complain. He had not, he reminded himself, come here for rest. But while the quiet king was building, something old was waking. In the lower layers of the inner realm, far below the throne room, far below the lake of black fire, in caverns that had not been mapped because the cartographers who entered them had never come back, there was an order of demons that everyone had forgotten on purpose. They called themselves the Hollow Choir. The records of the royal scribery did not name them. Demon Lord Morthane's ledger did not mention them. Even Vazimor the Patient, who had waited at the lake for 3,000 years, would not say their name aloud. They were the loyalists of the king before Aren. 3,000 years ago, when the first quiet king had departed the throne, he had left behind a small order of priests who had served him in the deepest places. These priests had refused to accept the new order, meaning refused to accept the empty throne. They had retreated into the lower caverns and had built a chapel out of obsidian and bone, and they had waited there, singing a single note for 30 centuries. The note was the keynote of the first king's voice. They had sung it without stopping for 3,000 years. Different members took shifts. The note had not stopped, not for a single second, not even when the lake of black fire had quieted, not even during the 3 wars, not even during the silence of the 3,000 years of waiting. They sang. They had sung. They were singing still. They were, by any reasonable measure, insane. They had been insane for centuries. But they were also extremely old, and extremely organized, and extremely patient, and they had been preparing, all that time, for the day a new king would sit on the throne. Their plan was simple. They did not believe that a new king could be the true king. The true king, in their theology, had been the first king, and only the first king, and any successor was a usurper to be purified. Purification, in their understanding, required a sacrifice, and the sacrifice they had been preparing for across 3,000 years was specific. The sacrifice was the soul that the new king loved most. They had a name for the practice. They called it the anchor severance. The theory was that a king of the inner realm could only be ruled by his attachments. Sever the attachment, sever the king. Drag the loved soul down into the lower layers. Force the king to choose between his realm and his beloved. In every previous succession, no king had survived this choice. But there had not been a succession in 3,000 years, and the Hollow Choir had used the time to refine the technique. On the 9th day of Aren Vexharrow's reign, the Faceless Cantor, the leader of the Hollow Choir, stopped singing for the first time in 80 years. He had been singing for the previous 80 years. Before him, another cantor had sung for 112 years. Before her, another for 94. The note had not stopped, but the voices carrying it had rotated. When the Faceless Cantor stopped, his second-in-command, a thin demon named Brother Ossifel, picked up the note immediately, without missing a beat. The Faceless Cantor walked, for the first time in 80 years, out of the Obsidian Chapel. He walked up through 3 layers of caverns. He emerged onto the plain of gray ash. He looked at the throne room in the distance, glowing softly with the light of the self-lit throne. He smiled. He had no face. His face had been removed, ceremonially at his ordination, replaced by a smooth oval of black stone, but the smoothness of the oval shifted, very slightly, in a way that anyone who had ever met him would recognize as a smile. Then he turned, walked back down into the caverns, and began to give the first new orders the Hollow Choir had received in 3,000 years. The orders were simple. Find the wife, take her, bring her down. The wife in question was, of course, Eliza. She was, at that moment, sitting on a stone bench in the third garden of the upper realm. The third garden was a place of slow streams and white flowers and quiet light. It was where souls who had loved well went to be still. Eliza had been there for 9 days. She had spent most of those days on the bench. She was waiting. She did not know exactly what she was waiting for, but she knew it had a navy blue jacket and tired, kind eyes, and she knew it was coming, eventually, because nothing else made sense. She was not unhappy. The third garden did not permit unhappiness. It gently dissolved it, the way warm water dissolves salt. But she was not at peace either. She had a weight in the center of her chest that the garden's mechanisms could not dissolve, because the weight was not unhappiness. The weight was him. the weight of knowing he was somewhere, the weight of waiting to find out where. She had been visited by an Archon named Vexharrow 4 days ago. He had been kind, in the cool way of Archons. He had told her that her husband was well, that her husband had a position of some importance in another realm, and that her husband would not be permitted to visit her. He had not told her where exactly. He had not told her why exactly. He had told her enough that she understood, with the strange clarity that the dead have, that the situation was persistent. She had thanked him. She had not cried. She had said, "Tell him the lemon cake, he will know." Vexharrow had inclined his head, very slightly, and left. That had been 4 days ago. Since then, she had sat on the bench. Other souls in the third garden had come and gone. A child with golden hair had stopped to show her a flower she had picked. An old woman had sat beside her for a while and not said anything, which was perfect. A young man who had died in a war that Eliza had never heard of had asked her if she knew the way to the fourth garden, and she had said, "No, I am sorry, I do not. But I think it is to the east," and he had bowed and gone east. She was sitting on the bench when the cold reached her. It came from below. It came from beneath the bench, beneath the path, beneath the white flowers. A cold the third garden was not designed to handle. It rose up through the stone of a schoolteacher. She had taught third graders to read for 19 years. She had not been in a fight since she was 9 years old. She had not raised her voice in anger more than 4 times in her entire adult life. But she had been married for 12 years to a man who never panicked. She had absorbed, over those 12 years, a certain calmness that was not native to her, but was deeply learned. So when the cold rose up into the third garden, and the white flowers turned gray, and a thin black crack appeared in the middle of the path in front of her bench, she did what Aren would have done. She stood very still. She looked at the crack. She said out loud, calmly, "I see you." The crack widened. From inside it, a thin gray hand emerged. Then another. Then a face, or what would have been a face, if it had not been a smooth oval of black stone. The faceless cantor pulled himself up out of the path of the third garden. He should not have been able to be there. The third garden was meant to be sealed against intrusion from below, but he had been preparing for 3,000 years to break exactly that seal, and the mechanisms of the upper realm, beautiful as they were, had not been refreshed in a very long time. He bowed to Eliza. He said, in a voice that was the sound of stone grinding very slowly against stone, "Madam, your husband has summoned you." Eliza said, "No, he hasn't." The faceless cantor paused. This was not the response he had been expecting. In 3,000 years of planning, his liturgy had assumed terror, or confusion, or grief, not contradiction. He said, "Madam, I assure you," Eliza said, "my husband does not summon, my husband asks. If he wanted to see me, he would not send a stranger with no face up through a crack in a flower bed. He would come himself, or he would write me a letter. You are lying. Go away." She sat back down on the bench. She folded her hands in her lap. She looked, very deliberately, at a different part of the garden. The faceless cantor stood in the wilted flowers for a long moment. He had not been refused in this manner by anyone in his entire long existence. He did not know how to proceed. The liturgy of the anchor severance did not contain instructions for what to do when the anchor talked back. He took a step toward her. He extended one gray hand. A second figure stepped onto the path between them. She had not been there a moment ago. She was tall and slender, wearing armor that was the color of moonlight on water, and she carried no weapon, but the air around her bent slightly, the way air bends around heat. Her name was Archon Selavanya, and she was the warden of the third garden, and she had not had to defend it in 900 years, but she had not forgotten how. She said in a voice like a struck bell, "You are not permitted here." The faceless cantor said, "I have authority from..." Selavanya said, "You have authority from no one. Leave or be unmade." The faceless cantor weighed his options. He had not come prepared for an Archon. The original plan had assumed that the third garden was unguarded, and it had been, for centuries. The presence of Selavanya was new. It was, in fact, less than 4 days old. It had been requested, very quietly, by a thin Archon named Vexharrow, after a conversation with a quiet king who had asked one specific favor and one specific favor only. The favor had been, please watch over her. Whatever else happens, please watch over her. The faceless cantor calculated. He could fight and lose and be unmade and end his order's 3,000 years of preparation in a single afternoon. Or he could withdraw, regroup, and try again from a different direction. He chose to withdraw. He bowed to Selavanya, a stiff, hateful bow, and he stepped back into the crack in the path. The crack closed behind him. The cold receded. The gray flowers, slowly, began to turn white again. Selavanya knelt by the bench. She said, "Madam, are you harmed?" Eliza said, "No, thank you. Did my husband send you?" Selavanya said, "Indirectly, madam, yes." Eliza nodded. She said, "Tell him I am all right. Tell him the flowers came back. Tell him I am still on the bench." Selavanya bowed and left. Eliza sat on the bench for the rest of that day. The flowers around her by evening were whiter than they had been in the morning, but somewhere far below, in an obsidian chapel where a single note had been sung without ceasing for 3,000 years, the faceless cantor was already drafting a second plan. This one would not fail. Word reached the throne room within the hour. Selavanya did not come herself. Archons of the upper realm cannot, by covenant, enter the inner realm. She sent her message through Vetherial, who walked again, alone, up the road of dark stone, in his white linen that did not show ash, and who was admitted to the throne room without delay. Aren was in the middle of an audience with a delegation of furnace workers from the 7th quarter when Vetherial entered. He stopped the audience mid-sentence. He stood up for the first time in front of an archon, and he said, "Tell me." Vetherial told him. Aren listened without interrupting. When Vetherial finished, Aren said, "Is she safe now?" "She is. Selavanya is with her. The breach is sealed. The third garden is being reinforced as we speak." "Will it hold?" Vetherial paused. He was not in the habit of guessing, and he did not begin now. "If the threat is what we believe it is, my lord, no. It will not hold indefinitely. The Hollow Choir has had 3,000 years to prepare. We have had 4 days to respond. The arithmetic is unfavorable." Aren sat down. He looked at the 12 crowns, still on the floor, still in the same positions where they had been placed 9 days ago. He looked at the obsidian wall above the door, and the carving that meant, "Endure." He said, "Then I will go to them." The throne room was very quiet. Demon Lord Vazamor the patient, who had been standing by the door, took one step forward. He said, "My lord." Aren raised a hand. Vazamor stopped. Aren said, "I will go to them, alone, tonight. I will not send soldiers. Soldiers are what they are prepared for. They have been preparing for soldiers for 3,000 years. They have not been preparing for a king who comes alone, on foot, with no weapon, and asks a question." Vazamor said, "My lord, with respect, they will kill you." Aren said, "They cannot kill me. I am already dead. The most they can do is end me, and if they end me, the realm passes to the Council of 3 I have appointed, and the work continues. I am not the work. I am only the man currently doing the work. Send word to Ilaran. He is to record this conversation in the ledger, and to mark it with my seal. If I do not return by dawn, the Council assumes the throne. The realm continues. The wars do not restart. The tribute does not return. Is that understood?" Vazamor bowed. "It is understood, my lord." Aren stood. He took off the dark robe of the quiet king and laid it across the throne. He stood in the simple gray shirt and trousers he had been wearing underneath. He looked, in that moment, exactly like what he had been 10 days ago, a 41-year-old accountant from a small town with tired, kind eyes and nothing in particular to recommend him. He said to Vetherial, "Tell Eliza I will see her on the bench. One way or another. Tell her to wait." Vetherial said, "My lord, the covenant." Aren said, "I know what the covenant says. Tell her anyway." He walked out of the throne room. The 12 crowns watched him go. The throne, behind him, dimmed slightly, as though aware that its occupant was about to do something very dangerous and was preparing, without resentment, to be empty again. He walked, alone, down into the lower layers of the inner realm. He carried no weapon. He wore no robe of office. The only thing he carried was a small, folded piece of paper, a page Ilarayan had handed him at the door, on which the royal scribe had written, in his careful handwriting, 6 words: I am recording. Walk well, sir. Aren put the paper in his pocket. He began to walk. The road down was longer than the road up. It wound through caverns that grew darker and colder and quieter as he descended. After 3 hours, he could no longer hear the sounds of the upper court. After 6, he could not hear his own footsteps on the stone. After 9, the only sound he could hear was a single note, very far below, being sung without pause by a chorus he could not yet see. The note grew louder as he descended. By the time he reached the door of the Obsidian Chapel, the note was the only sound in the world. He stopped in front of the door. The door was made of bone and obsidian, and it was 9 feet tall, and it had no handle. Aren did not knock. He did not announce himself. He stood in front of the door, and he waited, in the way he had learned, in 14 months of watching a wife die, to wait for the thing that was coming whether you announced yourself or not. After a long time, the door opened by itself. Inside, in the chapel of bone and obsidian, in the center of a circle of 300 singing demons whose throats had been singing the same note for 3,000 years, the faceless cantor was waiting for him. The cantor stood up from the altar. The altar was made of a single block of black stone. On the altar lay a length of gray rope, coiled and ready. The rope was the instrument of the anchor severance. It had been waiting on that altar, coiled in exactly that way, for 3,017 years. The cantor said, "You came alone." Aren said, "I did." The cantor said, "That was not predicted." Aren said, "I know. That is why I did it." The 300 singers continued the note, without pause. The cantor took one step forward. He said, "You understand that you will not leave this chapel, my lord." Aren said, "I understand that one of us will not." He stepped through the door. The door closed behind him. The note continued. The note continued. Aren Vexharrow stood inside the chapel of bone and obsidian, and 300 faceless singers held a single note that had been held for 3,000 years, and the faceless cantor walked, slowly, around the altar toward him. Aren did not move from where he had stopped, 3 steps inside the door. He looked at the singers. He looked at the altar. He looked at the coiled gray rope. He looked, finally, at the cantor. He said, "Why her?" The cantor stopped walking. He had not been expecting a question. He had been expecting a defense, a plea, an attack, the standard responses written into his liturgy across 30 centuries. He said, "My lord?" Aren said, "Why my wife? There are easier anchors. There are dozens of demons in this realm I have come to care for in 9 days. Brekisu, the door warden, Ilaran, the scribe, Vazamor, who waited for me. Why my wife, who is not even in your realm? Why reach so far? Why pick the one who is already gone?" The cantor was silent. The note continued. After a long moment he said, "Because she is the truest one, my lord. The others were given to you. She was chosen by you. The others you would replace. Her you would not." Aren said, "That is true." The cantor said, "Then you understand why she must be the instrument." Aren said, "I understand why you believe she must. I do not agree." He took one step forward. The cantor did not move. The singers continued. Aren said, "I want to speak to you, cantor, not as king to priest, as one widower to another." The cantor said, "I am not a widower, my lord." Aren said, "You are. I can see it. I have been one for 10 days. I know the shape. You have been one for 3,000 years. You have built a chapel around it. You have made an order of it. You have sung a note about it that you cannot stop because if you stopped, you would have to feel it. I know that shape. I am wearing it." The cantor was very still. Aren said, "Who was she?" The cantor did not answer for a long time. The note continued. The 300 singers did not falter. Finally, in a voice that was no longer stone grinding stone, but something quieter, almost human, the cantor said, "Her name was Teresa. She was the consort of the first king. When he departed the throne, he asked her to come with him. She refused. She believed her duty was to remain and keep the chapel. He left. She stayed. She sang the note for 900 years. When she ended, I picked it up. I have been picking it up for the rest of the time." Aren said, "And what does the note do?" The cantor said, "It holds him here. As long as the note continues, he is not fully left. He is still, in some measure, present in this realm. We have been keeping him present, my lord. For 3,000 years, we have been refusing to let him go." Aren said, "And you believed that if a new king arrived, the note would end, because the realm would have its sovereign again, and he would finally be gone." The cantor bowed his head. The smooth black oval where his face had been showed nothing, but the bow was answer enough. Aren said, "So the anchor severance was not about destroying me. It was about giving you a reason to keep singing. If you took my wife, I would come down here to fight you. The fight would justify the chapel. The chapel would continue. The note would continue. Teresa's note would continue. The first king would remain in some measure here." The cantor said, "Yes." Aren walked slowly to the altar. He stood beside it. He looked at the coiled gray rope. He did not touch it. He looked at the cantor who had not moved. He said, "I have a different offer." The cantor said, "My lord?" Aren said, "End the note, tonight. Let the first king finish his departure. Let Teresa finish hers. Let the 300 singers go to wherever they should have gone 3,000 years ago. And in return, I will give you what you actually came here to ask for, even if you do not know yet that you are asking." The cantor said, very quietly, "And what is that, my lord?" Aren said, "Permission to grieve. Without the chapel, without the rope, without the plan. Just grieve. Properly. The way it should have been done 30 centuries ago. I am giving you permission, cantor. You do not need to sing anymore. You do not need to hold him. You are allowed to let him go and still love him. That is the part Teresa did not understand. That is the part you have been protecting her from understanding. Letting go is not betrayal. It is the last act of love. It is the only act of love that has been left undone in this chapel for 3,000 years." The chapel was silent for the first time in 30 centuries. The note had stopped. It had not stopped because anyone had ordered it to stop. It had stopped because, somewhere among the 300 singers, one had heard what the quiet king had said, and had taken a breath instead of continuing the note. And the singer next to her had heard the breath. And the singer next to him had heard the silence. And one by one, across the chapel, the singers had let the note fall. The faceless cantor stood at the altar. The smooth black oval where his face had been began, very slowly, to crack. It was not a violent crack. It was the kind of crack that appears in old stone when, finally, the weight inside it shifts. A line of pale light opened along the center of the oval. The light widened. Beneath the stone, there was a face. It had been there all along. It was the face of an old demon, lined and tired, with eyes that were closed because they had been closed for 3,000 years, and the muscles to open them had been forgotten. The eyes opened. They looked at Aren. The cantor said in a voice that was no longer ceremonial, no longer ancient, no longer stone, just the voice of an old creature who had been holding his breath for 30 centuries and had finally exhaled, "Thank you, my lord." He sat down on the floor in front of the altar. He put his head in his hands. He began, for the first time, to do what no one had permitted him to do for 3,000 years. He cried. The tears were ordinary. They ran down through the cracks in the stone of his face and fell onto the obsidian floor and made small, ordinary sounds. Aren knelt beside him. He did not say anything. He had learned in 14 months of watching Eliza die that there are moments when words are an insult, and the only respectful thing is to be present and to be quiet. He was present. He was quiet. After a long time, the cantor lifted his head. He said, "My name is Olam. I have not said it in 3,000 years. I would like you to use it, my lord, if you would." Aren said, "Olam, I am glad to know you." Olam said, "What do we do now?" Aren said, "Now you and your singers walk up out of the lower caverns with me. We will go up the road of dark stone together. Ilaren will record your names, all 300 of them, in the royal ledger. The chapel will be sealed, not destroyed. The first king will finish his departure. Teresa will finish hers. You will be given a quarter of the realm to live in. You will be free citizens. You will not sing. You will do something else, anything else. I do not care what. You will learn. You have 3,000 years of skill at not living. You will need to learn the opposite. We will help. Olam said, "And the rope?" Aren looked at the coiled gray rope on the altar. He picked it up. It was lighter than he had expected. He said, "I will keep it, as a record, so that what almost happened here is not forgotten." He put the rope in his pocket, next to Ilaren's folded paper that read, "I am recording. Walk well, sir." Then he stood up. He helped Olam to his feet. The 300 singers were already moving toward the door, slowly, in a long, quiet procession. None of them spoke. They did not know how, yet. They would learn. Aren walked at the front of the procession, beside Olam. The road up was long. None of them hurried. They had nowhere they needed to be in any particular order, for the first time in 3,000 years. They emerged onto the plain of gray ash just before dawn. Demon Lord Vazamor the Patient was waiting at the gate. He had been waiting there since the moment Aren had left 9 hours earlier. He had not sat down. He saw the procession coming up the road, and he saw the quiet king at the front of it, alive, walking, with 300 singers behind him whose mouths were closed for the first time in 30 centuries. Vazamor knelt. He did not rise. He said into the ash, "My lord, you returned." Aren said, "I did. Stand up, Vazamor. I need you. Send for Ilaren. Send for Syrexa. Send for Morthane. We have 300 new citizens to settle, and a sealed chapel to register, and a name to add to the ledger. His name is Olam. Write it carefully." Vazamor stood up. He bowed once more, a true bow, the deepest he had given in 3,000 years, and went to do as he had been asked. Aren walked back to the throne room alone. He did not put the dark robe back on. He sat in the throne in his gray shirt and trousers, with the coiled rope in one pocket and Ilaren's paper in the other, and he watched the light of the throne brighten around him as the throne registered that its king had returned. Ilaren arrived within minutes. He had not stopped writing. He carried his ledger open, his pen still wet. He bowed. He said, "My lord, the night is recorded." Aren said, "Good." "Add one more thing." Ilaren lifted his pen. Aren said, "Write that the king came back. Write that no blood was shed. Write that 300 singers stopped singing and were given names. Write that the faceless cantor remembered his face. And write, in the margin, that the king kept the rope as a reminder of what does not need to happen if you ask the right question first." Ilaren wrote. His pen moved quickly. When he finished, he closed the ledger gently and looked up. He said, "My lord, there is a message." Aren said, "From whom?" Ilaren said, "From the upper realm. The Archon Vetheriel left it at the gate while you were below. It is sealed. It is for you alone." He held out a small folded letter. The paper was thin. The seal was made of white wax, unmarked. Aren took the letter. He did not open it. He held it in his hand for a long moment, feeling its weight, which was almost nothing. He said, "Thank you, Ilaren. Leave me, please." Ilaren bowed and left. The throne room was empty. Aren broke the seal. The letter was 3 lines long. It was written in a handwriting he had known for 12 years. The handwriting of a third-grade teacher who had spent 19 years correcting children's penmanship and had developed, in the process, the most patient script in any realm. The letter said, "I am still on the bench. The flowers came back. I know where you are. I know why you cannot come. I am not angry. I am proud. The lemon cake is enough. .e." Aren read it 3 times. He folded it. He put it in his pocket alongside the rope and Ilaran's paper. He sat in the throne for a long time and did not move. Then he stood up. He walked to the door of the throne room. He opened it. Ilaran was waiting outside, as he always was now. Aren said, "Ilaran, one more entry." Ilaran opened the ledger. Aren said, "Write. Today, the king received a letter. The contents are private. Write that the king read it 3 times. Write that he did not weep, because the qualification of grief is not weeping, it is continuing. Write that he returned to the throne and continued." Ilaran wrote. He closed the ledger. He bowed. Aren went back to the throne. He sat down. He picked up the report he had been reading 9 hours earlier, before the news of the Hollow Choir had arrived. It was a report from the 7th quarter about the resettlement of furnace workers. He resumed reading at the line where he had stopped. He made a small note in the margin in his own handwriting. He turned the page. The throne, behind him, glowed softly. The realm around him continued. The wife he could not reach was on a bench in another garden, and she was proud of him, and she was waiting, and she was not coming, and he was not going. And that was the price the throne charged, and he was paying it, line by line, page by page, day by day, for as long as it took. This was the kind of king the inner realm had been waiting 3,000 years for, the kind who would pay. I am RiseArc. I told you at the beginning that of all the stories I carry from beneath the 7 layers, this is the one I tell with the most care. Now perhaps you understand why. Hell did not capture him, Hell hired him. And the wife he could never reach was the price the throne kept charging, the same price every morning for the rest of his reign. He paid it every morning. He never complained, he never bargained, he never abdicated. He sat on the throne and he ruled well, and he ruled alone. And somewhere far above, in a garden of white flowers, a woman who had been a schoolteacher for 19 years sat on a stone bench and waited, and was not afraid, because she knew exactly what kind of man she had married, and she knew he was, in his own quiet way, walking toward her. Through every order he signed, through every theft he corrected, through every dissolution he witnessed, through every page Illyran recorded. He was walking toward her the long way, the way that takes lifetimes, the way that perhaps eventually arrives. I will tell you when it does. In the next story, a second letter arrives at the gate of the throne room. It is also in her handwriting, but it is not from her. It is from someone else, writing in her hand. And what that letter asks of the quiet king will cost him something even the qualification of grief has not prepared him for. If you have walked this far with me, walk further. Subscribe. The lower layers are deeper than anyone has yet mapped, and I am still mapping. The next descent begins soon. I am RiseArc. Endure.